Cash-a-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to episode 171 of the GeoGearHeads, and we're back to the normal host, no imposters this time. And for those of you who maybe didn't realize, we do have to thank Scott Burks for filling in as me last week, and Dave DeBear is filling in as Chris. So I think that was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys did too, but we did get some emails with the questions wondering what exactly was going on, thinking that they had bad audio connections or if we had colds or something. But, you know, Chris, we both do have colds this week.
Exactly. We do have colds, so you really can't tell if it's us or not. You know, perhaps if you listen to us, you know, at a higher speed or slower speed, we'll sound more normal, but this is all you got tonight.
It is. But, you know, I think a lot of people are actually a little curious as to the question from last week.
Well, I think it's time we get to that question that we asked last week in honor of this week's guest. So we asked, what was the GC number of the first cache in Puzzlers26 presidential series?
And since he's right here sitting next to me, what was the GC number of your first presidential series cache?
Well, the GC number was GC2JY31.
And that's Berkeley's third one. Presidential series number 1, which I have to say I found it, but I can't remember which one that is because I get all of the caches now confused. So if I went back and actually looked at the logs, I could probably tell you, but I can't just off the top of my head. And one of our previous guests was also drawn as the random winner for this week's prize, and that's Antaeus. And I apologize, I haven't gotten back to you yet, Antaeus, to get which of those cool prizes you want from our coinsandpins.com bag of prizes, but I'll be doing that shortly after the show, and we'll get that out to you pretty quickly. Now, for anyone who doesn't know Puzzler26, which is probably most of you out there right now,
and including me, Daryl,
and including you, because you know, Chris, you came to town last year about this time, and I seem to recall saying we really should try to find one of these Puzzler26 caches, and we both agreed we should, but we just didn't have the time to do it. But
yeah, we were just talking before the show. It was a shame because, you know, now that I'm hearing about them, I really want to go find these things.
Yeah, these are some really notable caches. They're very, very cool, clever hides, and we'll talk a lot more about them in a minute or two. But yeah, they really just kind of blow your mind as what you can do. And these don't cost a whole lot to create, as I understand.
No, that's true. They don't. They're very cheap to make.
So it's mostly just the creativity goes into it. Before we even get into what goes into one of these, is there one that you think is especially clever hide that you can, you know, tell us a little bit about without giving it all away?
Well, I think if you've done the Peace and Quiet one, it's kind of a gadget cache in the cemetery. I got a kick out of that one.
I think I have. That rings a bell.
Yes, yeah, multiple ways to get into it. First you go one way, then you go to another way, and that leads you to the final destination. And I get a kick out of that one because I get a lot of nice logs written up about that one.
Yeah, I think I do remember doing that one back in October, right around the time of another cache series in this area.
Yeah, October, this past October?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what one went out then. That was my last one that went out, fishing. Let's Go Fishing. Recall doing that one?
No, that one doesn't ring a bell offhand.
Okay, well, that was only out for a couple of months, and I took it down at the end of December before the freezing weather came back. So that was a fun one, though. And I actually, when I went to take it out in the end of December, it was actually scattered all over the place. So I don't know if an animal got it or some muggles or what. And that's the only one I haven't put back yet because I'm still doing some maintenance on it. I hope to get that out this weekend and got my fingers crossed that nothing goes wrong with it because I had a lot of fun putting that one together, and it will be fun finding it.
Well, that actually brings up something that we want to talk about later, which is the maintenance. But let's talk a little bit first about how you construct these caches, not necessarily the engineering that goes into it, but the materials that you use are like scraps, as it looks like on many of them.
Yeah, I guess, I started with wood years ago. That seemed to be the easiest thing to do, just scraps of wood. So I started making some boxes up with that, or some ways to get into the wood. And that went into some fencing material. Again, it's easy pipes that are already out there. And I found myself progressing a couple of years ago into PVC. And I started to have some issues with the wood ones, with the swelling contraction of wood. And so with the PVC, I started to get really creative with some of the pipes, the different sizes of pipes, the caps, the adapters, and what you can do with PVC. And it just seemed to all come together, and just it seemed like just one right after the other. I'd be making these caches, and a week later I'd get another idea for another one, throw it together, and then a week later another one. But with PVC, I'm not having any issues with those. There's no swelling of anything. So that seems to be working out the best so far, is the PVC. And now I've got into this past winter, I had a lot of fun with composite decking material. That I'm finding out is a lot better than wood. It's a lot stronger than wood, and it's not going to swell. It's not going to contract. So I'm putting a lot together right now with the composite decking.
Well, we should mention that this is in Michigan, Oakland County, more precisely, that you've hidden all these caches. So we do have those nasty cold winters. We do have some humidity. We have a lot of flooding in some areas, as we have like right now because it's raining. And, we do have tornadoes, which we might get called away for the tornado siren as well. So it is a wide variety of circumstances you have to deal with up here. And that moisture is more a problem here than it is elsewhere. But it seems like that wood decking is a really cool product because it has the versatility of wood, but you get the durability of the PVC kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to be finding out this year a lot with that, because as I said, this winter I started to work with that a lot, so I haven't got them out in the field yet. So I actually got 6 or 7 that I threw together this winter, various ways of getting into it, and I hope to get them out soon. And like you, I'm curious to see how the weather's going to take it, but I'm pretty sure it's going to handle it pretty well. Of course, anything out in the wintertime, whether it's wood or plastic, I have issues with freezing because there's a lot of moving parts on them. And so usually I take them down and put them back in the spring. And that's what I've been doing every day for the past 2 weeks, getting them ready. And hopefully this weekend I can have them all ready to go.
Well, I'm hoping so, because we've got Fire Safe coming into town, and we've got Scott and Shorty Knits are coming in, and they're going to want to do some of those caches. So we're going to have lots of people doing your caches in the next month or so. But let's get to the maintenance stuff a little bit, because you did talk a little bit about PVC being better, and composite looks like it's going to be the new solution. What do you do for the maintenance on these generally? Is it something you go out and check on them on a regular basis, or do you have spare caches built in some cases?
Well, it's funny you should say if I have a spare cache. One issue I had, and luckily I had a spare made. I had a Cryptex type of cache it's one of mine that disappeared out of my what do we got? 32 caches or 36. I had 4 of them that I had disabled. 3 of them construction made them disappear, and the 4th one it disappeared. And that was my Cryptex, and it was a really nice little Cryptex out of 2-inch PVC pipe. And I actually had made a prototype before I threw that together. So when that smaller Cryptex disappeared, you see I had a replacement. The prototype was the actual replacement. So I was lucky enough to have some sort of a Cryptex type of cache that I could go out there and take the place of the other one. And the maintenance, it's a lot to do with the people writing in their logs about finding issues with it and that it should be checked on. Going out on my own and just looking at them, I'd say maybe twice during the summer, during the year, I'll go out, just happen to be in the area, and just stop by and see it and see how it's doing. And yeah, there'll be a log that has to be replaced, or there'll be something that has to be tightened up, or it's not put exactly back to where I'd like to have it. And yeah, there's a lot of maintenance with mine, and I'm finding it's taking a lot of time, and kind of considering maybe cutting back on how many caches being put out because they're becoming so maintenance involved right now.
I can certainly understand it, but they are great caches. And
thank you.
On behalf of the local cachers and the visiting cachers, thank you for putting them out and taking care of them.
Appreciate that.
One of the things, though, that I've run into with the PVC ones especially is the people just before me. And I've been told that this has happened on like 3 or 4 of your caches. I've confirmed with some of the other locals. I'm always afraid to force these things open, but they're going and really cranking down parts on those to the point where they don't come off easily, and I'm afraid that they're actually glued on.
Yeah.
So I know you've had to go out and check on at least one of those
I'm
and
writing
confirm
that.
that was the case.
Oh, I'm writing that right now. In fact, I'm putting in some of my descriptions. So going back to my old descriptions, I'm putting in that first sentence: do not force, this does not move, this does that. And then I get into a little story about it. And also there's some of them, maybe a PVC pipe where I had a screw and a plug for the top of the pipe. People would obviously screw it in as tight as they can. And then the next person like you would be coming along and couldn't unscrew it. So I found if I can do something to make it only screw in so far where it's not tight, but it's still kind of sealed. So I put screws in the threads so they can only go down so far, and then it's easier to back off. So I'm constantly rethinking some of these to make it easier for the next person.
Right. Yeah. And to make sure that you don't have as many maintenance logs either.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Yeah. I'll have to go out and look at it, and then I'll have to post it, temporary maintenance, and then take 2 or 3 days, and hopefully get it back within the next couple of days.
Well, and some of these aren't very complex that you can do them. If you get lucky, I'd say some of them I've done in like 5, maybe 10 minutes, but there are others that you're out there for an hour or more just to do it as a normal cache. And I have one in Southfield like that where I got started on it, the bugs were eating me, and I ran out of time. So I have to go back out and do it. And it turns out I went the wrong way on doing part of that multi. I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about at this point, and anyone who's done it knows. But that one was a very cool one with the way that you repurposed an item. And that one might be a cool one to talk about as a example of how you come up with ideas. So let's talk about how some of these ideas come to you.
Oh gosh, well, I go way back. I've told people before that I've probably been making geocaches for almost 30 years. I just didn't know they were called geocaches. You go back in my past, and I've got 5 kids, and when the kids were young, I used to always tinker in my workshop and make things to take apart. And it became a thing when they were young, making banks, wooden banks that somehow they got to turn it this way or flip it that way or push in and push out on that to get to the money after they drop the coins into the slot. And every kid had a different way of getting into their bank. So that was a lot of fun, a lot of times getting to that. So that got me into making, well, let's just say puzzles. And with the boxes became other little intricate things years ago to get in or get out of or take apart and put back together. So the thought process of making things like that, I guess it's always been there. I again, many years ago, I started doing that. And then when geocaching came along for me about 5 years ago, I started getting into it. So this is what I've been doing for a long time, making these containers. Now I just got to get them out there and place them out there to hide. Of course, that's evolved into more crazy things that I've come up with. And again, back then it was all wood things because they were kept in the house. And now I'm finding out with the weather, as I make these things, they got to be more weatherproof. So yeah, that's the creative part also. I guess I'm constantly thinking about it, as we all are. All the hiders are thinking about how we can better the next one. The name, the Puzzler26 name, I've told some people, the Puzzler, again, that's one of my hobbies, making the puzzles. And the other hobby I call it a hobby, is 26 represents how many miles in a marathon. And I have a tendency to run a marathon every year. And so the creative juices for me really gets flowing when I'm out there just running every day. I try and get out there and get some kind of a short run in every day. And I find a lot of my locations like that. And there's a couple I found around your place here, Daryl, just running around this area a couple of weeks ago. I've got some ideas in mind. So you might be seeing a couple popping up around here. So, and then like everybody else is driving around, you kind of drive the back roads a little bit, the out of the way places, and hopefully you can find a spot that looks good for a cache. Again, with what's happening now, a lot of my containers seem to be made ahead of time. So now I have to find a location for them. In the early days, it was finding a location and make the container. And even the containers in the earlier days might have been just simple bison tubes or pill bottles, but a unique location or a unique way to retrieve that container is the Berkeley's third one. It's a lamppost one, but it's not your typical lamppost, but it's a unique way to retrieve that pill bottle. So ideas just flow into my head. Who knows when I'm going to get an idea. I just need a piece of paper and a pencil and get it down before I forget it. So, and then one thing just adds on to another, and we go from there.
Well, you mentioned sometimes you had the idea beforehand, before you found the location. Sometimes it's you find the location after you have the hide. But do the puzzles sometimes get their inspiration from a location?
Yeah, I guess there's a fence out there that I started thinking about. How can I use that pole of that abandoned fence in a wooded area? And I just thought and thought and thought, and I came up with an idea how I can make use of that fence post. And if you did jumping jack flash, you'll know what I mean. So there was a time where I found a location, and I had to think a little bit about how to make that exciting for people coming out to find it. In fact, my backyard, a lot of spots in my yard. You've heard other people do that. I got some holes in my fence post in my backyard. There was a lot of trial and error when it came to that one, but it turned out very nice. So that was an example of a location that I found. Now I had to make it fit. A couple of the other ones, right now I'm looking more into wooded areas because some of these caches are just simply maybe hiding in a wooded area or somehow attached to a tree. Some of the other unique ones, again, near a privacy fence, lamppost. And I've also noticed that, a lot of the normal hides out there, or what I call average ones, are parking blocks, guardrails, pine trees, those sort of things, where I've taken them, as I said, the lamppost, and put a different spin onto it. I found a lot of the lamppost hides and guardrail hides and mailbox hides. And if you found some of mine, you'll know what I mean. I've taken the average one and kind of bumped it up a little bit to a different level. So those are your typical spots, but let's see how we can make it better. So a lot of thinking went into them. I just didn't want to stick a magnet underneath the mailbox. I, put a different spin to it. So finding those locations are easy, but I got to make it special though. I'm not going to make it an average one.
Well, Daryl, we have some feedback from the live Q&A. This is from Limax. He asked, are all these mechanical? Are all the caches you're making mechanical?
Seems to be yes. Lately, last 2-3 years, I would say yes. So there's a lot more, again, the maintenance issues, internal parts, internal moving parts, whether it's springs, magnets, levers, weights, pins. And I've found out from earlier years, I may go in there and just use a standard nail or standard screw. And as time goes on, you obviously got to realize it's got to be a galvanized type of thing. Or if it's a pin, it may have to be brass or copper or aluminum. Those types of things. When I was doing the wood ones early, it was pine. And then quickly I realized after that, that's not going to work. And so I thought I'd put some outside paint on it or outside stain. But even then, it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And of course, you go from that to pressurized wood. And even that, they tend to want to warp and move a little bit. So you'll see a lot of my caches now, or that will be coming up. There might be a wood on the outside, but on the inside, it'd be the composite decking or the PVC. Any of the moving parts will be some sort of part that's not going to rust or corrode, and it's going to move smoothly. So, yeah, there is a lot of mechanical stuff going on inside of it. It's quite interesting sometimes.
So no like teak and brass.
No, none of the stupid, nothing like that. No.
He's not building ships. So
this is Michigan.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, lakes everywhere.
So you found that with the PVC and the composite decking that the transition from heat and cold, because you do have those extremes out in Michigan.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
Causing cracking.
Well, as I said, this year it's going to be the composite decking. I really got it in that this winter and came up with a bunch of them, and I hope to get them out this year. But also here, Chris, I'm taking them down in the wintertime, and the majority of them, I'm actually removing them from the site, just from the simple reason that the snow and the freezing weather, it's whether the composite decking or wood, they're just not going to operate. Whether it's the internal parts or just a little moisture that gets into it, it's going to freeze up. So when they are out there, it's in the times where we don't have freezing weather to worry about.
Completely understand that. So no heating elements on a thermostat to keep these things working in the winter?
I haven't got that far into it yet. I'm sure I won't either. Now for heat issues, of course, depending on that, sometimes things can get a little gummy. Not too bad, just the excessive heat. Not terribly bad. I'd say I've had some issues. I had one on a bridge, a wooden bridge, and I went to that one a week ago, and boy, did it just shift. Even though I took it somewhat apart for the winter, the freezing and the thawing of the ground shifted a lot of the bridge from the heaving, and that shifted a lot of moving parts that I had nothing to do with in the bridge area where the cache is hidden. So I've had to do some adjusting in that area to get it back to its original state. It's not where I'd like it to be, but I'm limited on what I can do.
Mhm.
But it's better than nothing.
So you talked about things like the cryptex. How is it that you've come up with building those? What's the engineering behind
I
that?
wish I looked at that YouTube video before. It was all just out of my head. I just started playing with it one day. I had some ideas in my head, and I started just getting the PVC thing going and cutting the couplings and the various other ways to do a cryptex. And I kind of just did it blind. In fact, that's the one that's out there now, being that's the prototype, because the better one, which I finally made it to the YouTube and saw how you can do these things, that one's the one that turned up missing. That one, it was hit and miss, and it was a course over 2 or 3 weeks. Hours, that one I probably spent more hours on that one than any of them. So it was a big disappointment when that one turned up missing. That could have been a good 40 hours over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, a little bit every day, right down to the painting and the numbering of it. So that was a disappointment to see that go. So, but again, that was just a free willy. As much as I can on paper, I try to put these ideas on paper. I just can't do it without the paper. And I've got a lot of notebooks at home that have taken up space around my house with ideas.
Kind of Da Vinci style drawings.
You're exactly right. Yeah. At home, at work, in my pockets. If I'm around, I need a piece of paper, I'll write on anything before I forget that idea. But that's the fun of it all, though. Just getting that out there and coming up with some ideas and putting it out.
Well, that's an impressive amount of work you put into that cryptex. Do you have a dedicated shop that you work in?
Well, I have a shop at work, and it's a combination wood shop, metal shop, even auto shop. So I have a lot of the power tools there. We have a lot of scrap wood there. There's metal. There's stuff that I bring in, again, from the local hardware stores. So it's a big area to work with. It's the size of a garage, a 20 by 20 foot garage. So that's where I do a lot of my work, a lot in my basement at home. And is sometimes out in the field. There's prepping the site. Nothing too drastic, but there's some areas that I have to get ready and prep it a little bit for the container. If I've got a tree with a hole in it, that's a nice spot to hide something, but sometimes the hole isn't big enough. So I have to go in there maybe with a little tinkering, a little fine tuning of the hole to make it the proper size. In fact, that one went out last year, and I'm concerned about that one because, as we all know, that hole's going to get smaller and smaller as time goes on. So that might be a maintenance issue. So, hey, I'm still learning, though.
Well, especially with water freezing in there and everything else, too.
Well, there again, that one disappeared over the wintertime, and I went back a couple of weeks ago to put that in. I think I went back and it was still freezing a little bit, so I had to hold off on that one for another week before I dumped that one in there. But you just never know. The freezing weather can do so much damage, as I said, that bridge. So that's why I removed a lot of the cache. I think I left 5 or 6 out that I wasn't too worried about when it came to freezing. And those I didn't have any issue with. Of course, not many people found them throughout the winter, but if they did, they shouldn't have had any issue with them other than unscrewing the bison too. Sometimes that can be a problem too, but nothing serious.
So with all these handmade caches, you've got to get a lot of favorite points, because I see cachers tend to prefer the containers over the puzzles that people have put a lot of work into. So do you have a lot of favorite points on your caches that you've created?
Well, I guess I do. I've seen a lot of the videos on West Virginia Tim. Of course, I'm never going to be like him. I'm very impressed with his caches. And, my highest, I think it's in the 90s, and the rest are double figures out of the 32 I have. So yeah, I love getting the favorites, and I guess I have a lot for this area. Constantly getting the logs on them and how they're going to be telling other people to come to this area, and they, everybody should be giving them favorites. The number I have exactly, I think it's up over 1,000, which, yeah, I guess that is pretty impressive. And hopefully I can get more favorites. I enjoy putting them out. I enjoy the people having fun finding them.
Yeah, it did. WV Tim tends to be, not always, but tends to be the standard birdhouse. And that's one of the things that I find really intriguing about yours. I don't think I've run into 2 yet that are, even if they're similar, that are the same basic hide. They're always a little bit different, so you never know what to expect. Yeah. And sometimes the actual container is challenging, and sometimes the hide is more challenging.
Yeah, it's a thrill. It's either going to be the location, as you said. It might be tricky to find that location, or it might be an easy finding the location and then getting into the hide. Or as gadget cache, obviously that's going to be easy to find, and it's going to be tricky to get into it. I've still got some birdhouse gadget caches or birdhouse caches that I haven't put out yet that I've been sitting on my workbench for 3 or 4 years. I just have so many caches on this bench, whether it's the composite decking, the birdhouses, or some kind of PVC arrangement. And it's just finding the right spot for them, because some are bigger than a 5-gallon bucket and some are just as small as my fist. But there's a way to get into it, whether you turn it, twist it, and you got to find the right spot for some of them.
Well, I know that you for Maker Faire or Maker Madness last year, you brought some of those containers that were more like prototypes, not necessarily the actual ones going out. And there were some really impressive containers in there.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, 2 or 3 different kinds. I think I brought in that time. There was a PVC pipe and a couple of other ones, some wooden ones.
Yeah, the birdhouse one that you brought then with the it had a plexi door that actually would slide up.
Yes.
And that was really cool.
Manipulating some smaller PVC pipes in the front of it to a certain spot, and then you're right, that door would pop up. Again, internally of that, obviously there's some pulleys and there's some rope or string in there. There's some weights in there. That one, I think in the back of my head, I don't know if I have my doubts. I just think if I'm going to have that thing out there, and if something goes wrong, it would be so easy for somebody to turn something a little too hard. So they're fun to make. I mean, they look great on the bench, but in the real world, as you said, you never know how hard somebody's going to try and turn something.
Well, and one of the things that as I recall, you discovered at the event was after people started playing with it, one of the knobs was getting jammed and it wouldn't go down all the way.
Yeah. That's what I'm finding out too. The resetting of these contraptions. Yeah, let's get into that. The resetting of them, I'm finding out it can be trickier. You have to let them know. Of course, I want people to find these things and I want them to open them. So a lot of them, they're never going to figure out. So in the hint, or sometimes if the container is big enough, I'll have the answer or the solution in there. And I'll say, don't read it until last resort. So I have to have an easy way for them to open it. And then on the same token, I have to have an easy way for them to reset it. And that can be tricky, coming up the right terms, the right words to say to make sense to them. As I said, to me, I can do it in my sleep. But if somebody else, I've got to come up with the right terms and the right words and make it sensible for them. And that can be tricky sometimes.
That makes a lot of sense that you can do it in your sleep because you created it, you envisioned it. Do you give hints to cachers, that can't figure out how to open this? I mean, do you give hints in the description or in the hint field, or wait for them to contact you?
I guess everything. I guess sometimes in the description, if you can read into it, I don't make it too complicated. It might be a combination that you need. So the way I word the description, I might have 3 numbers in there. And again, hopefully not too hard, but if it is hard by reading the description, again, they can always go to the hint and then I'll maybe refer them back to the numbers in the description or some other easy way of figuring out if it's a number item that they need to know how to get that, or where to look in the area they're at to get the answer to open it. Or if they hold this end up and the other end down, that would be easy to open it. And of course, if they contact me, I'll get back to them as soon as I can. I've had 2 or 3 people contact me and still couldn't get it. So the hint would become easier, or for them to open, and I could email them back when easier. And sometimes it's right under the rock. Look, you have to tell them. So yeah, I have no problem with helping people. I want them to find it. In fact, DNFs I don't allow. I get people that have a DNF there and they won't contact me, and that upsets me that they didn't find it. So I'll go out on my own and email these folks back. I'm sorry you missed it. Did you try looking, and explain to them a little bit about it? And hopefully they go back and have their fun with it. But yeah, no DNFs with mine.
And I can attest to that because I think that's one of them that I had posted where the cap had been put on too tight. Yeah. I think I posted the DNF. I think I found it. I got to go back and check again because I had problems with this. And then I don't know if I contacted you or you contacted me, but we got in touch then and you said, oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah, the cap was too tight.
The cap was too tight. I went back out, fixed it. So I went out on a different day to
try
it again.
The ones maybe the caps are on too tight, whether it's a PVC cap or some other kind of cap. I find out if I get some Vaseline or some motor oil or somehow make it easier that it screws off easier if it's screwing on or screwing off item. So there again, in fact, I have a couple of galvanized pipe at the one hide that seems to rust up a lot. So I'm out there, again, you talk about maintenance, maybe every 6 weeks throughout the summertime, just giving a little squirt of oil. Every time it rains, it gets rusty and somebody's always going to put it on tighter than the other guy. And I can't do anything different about that other than give it a squirt of oil every now and then. So
right.
I can do.
Well, but I imagine that the galvanized pipe probably, in most
Mm.
cases, looks like it belongs better than does like a PVC pipe.
Yeah. It looks like it should be that way, and they corrode a lot faster with PVC. You have a better chance with Vaseline loosening it up.
So, how much time would you estimate that you spend in maintenance on these caches?
More than you can imagine. Luckily, I'd say all the caches are about 5 miles within 5 mile radius of my house. So maintenance wise, an hour or two a week, but man, an hour a week. But it's an easy type of maintenance for me, depending on what I have to do. Being I'm running in the area, and then within 5 miles, it's nothing for me after work. It's to run to these caches for my training run and look at them and do a little light maintenance for them, or find out what I need and come back the next day with the item that I need to do the maintenance. Again, some are worse than others. I've had broken parts, and I've had stuff that have been forced. So yeah, it does require a lot of maintenance. And as I said in the early years, I put about 7 out a year, and wasn't too bad when I had 7, then 14, then 21. But as I said, now I'm looking at 32. So the maintenance is becoming a lot more involved now than I thought it would be. So every year it gets more and more, Chris.
So if you were to try to tell someone a tip or two to get them started on hiding some of these mechanical puzzle kind of caches, what would that be?
Oh gosh. If you can, just use your imagination. I mean, if it's PVC, if it's a wooden box, and trying to get into it somehow. I subscribe to a couple of puzzle companies that I actually go out and buy little puzzles that you can take apart and put back together. I've been doing that for 25 years. So I get a lot of the ideas like that. If you just look through their magazines, and some of these companies will actually give you the solution to their puzzle online. So if you don't want to buy it, you can actually see how they open it, and then use your imagination and maybe come up with something on your own. I just start tinkering, start playing in your workshop, and before you know it, you'll have something. If it's just a wooden box, 6 inches by 6 inches, and find a way to get into it and a way to put it back together, you can do it.
Well, and there's also, you mentioned the YouTube videos. I've heard from many people that's a good way to do it. And WV Tim has a great series out there for people who are looking at doing that style of mechanical puzzle cache. But you don't have to necessarily get as elaborate as he does with many of those.
No, you don't. In fact, I enjoy watching his. There's ideas in my head that I could be similar to his. I mean, a lot of his are, as we know, smell, touch, electricity, watching visual things. It's so unique to what he's come up with. And I know in the future, I'm going to come up with something similar to that. Right now, they're the basic gadget catches. Turn this and turn that and turn this in the right order, and the thing will come out. His are very unique, and you're right. You go into YouTube, you can get a lot of good ideas like that, not just from him, from a lot of other places. And I do spend a lot of time on YouTube searching many areas and coming up with ideas.
And I'm really looking forward to some of the 3D printed stuff that is coming out now. But how about for someone who's hunting one of your caches? Are there any tips that you would give them just generically about finding and getting to the log on one of them?
Well, if you're familiar with a lot of mine, I got this thing called the close clues. I don't know where. I guess I started maybe on my second one I put out in 2011. I just wrote something there with a matching marker near the actual container that said, "You're close," something like that. And a couple of logs that came in, they got the biggest kick out of just seeing that, and inches away or feet away would be the log. So they got a kick out of just knowing they were close, because it was an obvious thing that you would go to first before you lift something else up. So that got me into this thing going by putting other items around the containers. You've seen some of them, Daryl, that you're close or 5 feet away. So by doing that, I think I've added another degree of fun to it. So when they go to the site, they'll see that, hopefully, and some of these things are just as elaborate as the container, as some of the close clues. So they'll have fun playing with that, and they'll get to the container and say, this isn't the log, you got to keep looking. And they'll go over there 5 or 10 feet and they'll find the actual log. So again, I try and make it easy, and there's one that I've got, I think, like 4 little teeny close clues that spell out the word where it's at. And all these little close clues are just in pill bottles within 5, 10, 15 feet of the actual container. And I'll say on the cache paste, page that if you can't find the container, there's 4 closed clues in the area, and they're easy to find. And this is how, put those letters together that are in the closed clue. It spells out where the container is. So somehow I want to make it easy for them when they get there. Again, not too many DNFs, because of that reason. I want them to find it, and hopefully they find it. And again, though, if they need help, if they could give me a call, and we'll see what we can work out for them. But they will find it. I guarantee it somehow.
I am impressed. I just heard you say, and I'm still thinking about it. You say you put other clues around to help them find the solution to the main one. That's impressive.
Well, again, I've got so many ideas going in my head here of whether it's a container or how I can make it fun finding that I've got to get them out there. So I get them out there, as I said, in this close clue type of arrangement. Again, whether it's a magnet or something else hanging in the tree near the actual container, or just as crazy to find as the actual container. So if they're going to some of mine, they may be finding 2 or 3 little caches all in the same area until they find the main one.
Well, I've talked with a number of the cachers in this area who do explicitly go what we usually would call in most of the caches a red herring, because it's just a fake log. But these are actually clues. And I know so many of the cachers that I've talked to around this area who go specifically for your caches, look specifically for each of those close clues, even after they found and logged the cache. They want to find each of those close clues. Yeah,
I'll get written some of the logs that, I found the container, but hung around afterwards to find all the close clues. And, there's some disappointment sometimes that they don't find the close clues. They want to find everything. They want to find the total experience. And as they know, it could be 1 close clue, could be 2 close clues. In fact, 1 close clue might say close clue number 1. And so that kind of, reveals that there's going to be more. And they'll look for close clue number 2. And I might even say this is the last close clue. By then, hopefully, they know where the actual container is. So give them more of a thrill than just looking for one item. And as again, like I said, they're all in the general vicinity. They're not like in a different, too far away.
That's really impressive.
Well, is there any last minute tips or anything that you want to impart on our audience before we let you go?
Just, if you get into hiding these things, just, get them out there that, as we've heard from many hiders, hide the things that you want to find. I enjoy finding the bisons and the simple things like that. But if I can find something that makes me sit there for a while and makes me think for a while, how do I have to move something? How many things do I have to move? I want to use my head somewhat. And like everybody, of course, we all get frustrated too. And so like with the answers or with the hint, I'll almost practically have the way to do it. So I want them to walk away with knowing how to do it, but spend some time first trying it before they go to the answer. And they'll have an experience they'll never forget.
And of course, we'll link to your profile in the show notes where they can check out all of your caches.
Oh,
and definitely, if you're in the area, make sure to check those out.
Yeah, you're going to see that. It's another thing I try and do is, of course, is try and get them out at the end of the month. That's something, again, I started back in 2011. I think my first one went out on the 30th. And when I had the second one ready, it was just happened to be around the 30th. And I don't know why, I just started thinking, I can't be doing this every week or so. Let's do it once a month. And it just so happens that if you look at mine, they come out on the 30th of the month, April through Halloween. And so I get a lot of feedback like that people are looking forward to it, knowing they're coming out on the 30th and just can't wait. So that's kind of, if you're looking for, first to find, you kind of, know it's coming out and you're waiting for that message to come in that here comes Puzzler. People kind of run out there to find mine. So I get a kick out of that.
So you don't put one out in February?
No. November, December, February, March. We generally start in April. So I'm looking at the next 2 weeks here. I'm getting one ready right now. Hope to get it reviewed this weekend and have it out on the 30th of the month. And Daryl, it's going to be about 4 or 5 miles from your place here, so get ready.
I can almost walk the dog over.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this evening. We really do appreciate it. Now,
well, thank you.
Listeners, we want you to email geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com with the subject question 172 and tell us if you've done any geocaching by mass transit. We'd love to know why, or better yet, why not? And, of course, any of your stories. If you get that to us with your geocaching.com screen name by April 15th, that's tax day here in the U.S., that's 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, your name will be dropped into the drawing for another one of those prizes from coinsandpins.com. So get your email, question 172, to GeoGearHeads@CashManiacs.com with your screen name by April 15th, and you just might be a winner for next week's show.
And as we kind of hinted at, the next week's show is April 16th, and that's going to be mass transit caching with Subway Mark returning for that one. But that's not all we have. We have some other great shows. And of course, you can always call in your feedback. You don't have to email us at 206-350-3647. But of course, if you want to email us, that's GeoGearHeads@CashManiacs.com. And you can get your feedback, questions, and everything else in for any of these shows, including next week, 2 weeks from now. April 23rd is going to be kayaking with the Land Monkeys. Not just Land Monkey, but Mrs. Land Monkey as well. Talking about kayaking for your caches. April 30th, we're going to do Randomize 33. Great point to put in any of your comments, questions, feedbacks. Everything can get thrown into those shows, and usually does. May 7th is going to be Puzzles 3. We're really looking forward to having Cully, the author of the How to Puzzle Cache book, for that show. Then on May 15th, we have Dano of Team Poogatch returning to talk about gearing your bike, show number 2. We haven't done that one since the beta days, Chris.
I can't believe that. It seems like so long ago. Now, don't forget to check the Cache-A-Maniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cache-A-Maniacs shows coming and the Cache-A-Maniacs host healthy. So please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cache-A-Maniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2015 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cache with the Cache-A-Maniacs.